Okay, so it may be a little early, Darren, to start talking about wheat, but I'm already thinking about it on our farm. What are we going to do in terms of grass control going into 2012?
Well, it's easy to get excited when you look at the prices of really any crop.
Yep.
And you know, they move up and down, and even if they're off big one day, it's like, wow, they're still at a great level.
Yeah, but the whole thing is you can't worry so much about the grain markets because there's nothing you can do about that. But you know what you can control? How good a crop you're going to raise. And if you have grass out in your wheat, that's a tremendous problem. Grass is going to hurt wheat a lot more than broadleaves are going to hurt wheat. So you got to focus on grass, and we always tell guys that should be your very first priority. Worry about your grass. So we'll talk a little about winter wheatgrass herbicides and spring wheatgrass herbicides. Let's start with the winter wheat since we're standing in some winter wheat that's been growing all winter long. Yeah, it's going to be a little while before it gets sprayed, but there are some good options that we never had just a few years ago.
Well, when you think about it, when we talk about winter wheatgrass herbicides versus spring wheatgrass herbicides, if you're not a wheat farmer, you're probably thinking, well, what's the difference? You know, it's wheat. You know, we're using probably the same things.
Yeah, but the difference is the winter wheat is just a lot more hardy. It can withstand a lot more things. It's going to be sprayed earlier in the season and stuff like that. So I just wanted to talk about.
Plus, it went in the fall, and you think about that. When you put wheat in the fall, you're going to have some grasses that also may get going in the fall, and that can be a big problem when you're trying to control them in the spring. When you've got spring wheat, you've got the chance for a burn down ahead of time. You can still put a pre-emerge herbicide on ahead of your spring wheat. You've got a lot of options there, but with winter wheat, the wheat's already out there, it's already up. Now we've got to deal with the situation as it is.
Okay, what I wanted to focus on with this winter wheat, spring wheat thing with the grass herbicides is, let's take, for example, PowerFlex. Okay, PowerFlex is a great winter wheat product. It's going to be really good on cheatgrass and a number of other grasses besides some broadleaves. There's also Gold Sky, which has some PowerFlex in it. Okay, Gold Sky has other components too, but it does have some PowerFlex in it. But the thing with the Gold Sky, it has 3 times the amount of crop safener as the PowerFlex. So the Gold Sky can be used on spring wheat or winter wheat, but the PowerFlex can only be used on winter wheat. Spring wheat just can't tolerate as much herbicide as what the winter wheat can, or as harsh a herbicide.
And that's part of the problem. When you think about spraying stuff in the spring versus spraying in the fall, let me just tell you, if you've got a cheatgrass issue, you've got one of the brome species out in your crop, you've got jointed goat grass, some of these very tough to control winter wheat type grasses, you've got to get that product out there in the fall. And typically we're talking about Maverick, PowerFlex, Beyond in the Clearfield wheat, and Olympus. Those are the products that we're targeting for fall application. Now, if you didn't get them on in the fall and you still need to do something and it's in the spring, you know, hey, you're probably not going to get complete control, but you can still get good suppression, but you got to get out there fairly early if you're going to get that done.
Okay, so in other words, in the spring, if you're going to go after some of these winter annual grasses like cheatgrass, it's going to be tough no matter what you use. What a lot of farmers will do is they'll use Maverick in the fall or Olympus in the fall, then they'll use PowerFlex in the spring. The advantage with going with PowerFlex in the spring, yes, it may not be quite as good as what Maverick is. It's going to be really close though, but it's not going to have nearly the residual, and that's our biggest concern. If you're going to rotate to anything other than wheat, you've got to really look hard at what those rotational restrictions are when you start talking about Maverick and Olympus. That's a big deal.
Well, the other thing, Brian, is let's talk about the modes of action of these products and the chemical family that we're in. All the products that we mentioned here, the 4 main winter wheat products, are all in that ALS family of herbicides. When we talk about the spring wheat herbicides, we start looking at ACCase products in many cases, like your Axials, like your Discover and Puma. They're different modes of action. And a lot of times guys will say, well, you know, I need to rotate things up a little bit. There are different families available.
Yeah, but that's basically all you have. You've got the ALS family and you've got the ACCase family. We're starting to see some grasses basically becoming resistant to ACCase herbicides. So that's a concern, and that's where you would want to go with something like in the spring, again, PowerFlex. And another product we haven't talked about yet is Everest 2.0. That's a more safe version than the old Everest, so you're not going to see the amount of leaf burn that you used to, but it's an ALS herbicide. So if you're trying to rotate ACCase to ALS, don't forget about that Everest.
And Everest is awfully good on a number of different species. It's very good on wild oats, which is a really nice thing in spring wheat, and it's also good on the foxtail species.
Okay, but when you start talking about what's the best, then that's where we would probably say Axial. When we start talking about wild oats, green foxtail, yellow foxtail, giant foxtail, Axial's probably our #1 choice.
Well, Axial and Discover are good products. I like to rotate things between Axial and Everest 2.0 for the guys that are raising just spring wheat. I think that's a good way to give a 1-2 punch. When you look at Wild Oats and Foxtail Control, that's why a lot of guys are moving away from Puma. Puma was a really nice green foxtail product. Wild Oats, though, it takes that full rate to get it done, and a lot of times when you're mixing a broadleaf herbicide with the grass herbicide, it's going to decrease your activity of the grass herbicide. When you have something tough like Wild Oats, then you're going to start compromising your control.
Yeah, so in other words, what we're talking about is antagonism. And when you put the grass herbicide together with the broadleaf herbicide, your performance is probably going to drop 5 to 15%. So if you could get 95% control or 99% control normally out of the straight grass product, you put it together with a broadleaf product, you're talking maybe 80 to 95%, somewhere in that range. So if you have a million weeds out in the field, you might want to pay attention to that. You might want to spray separately.
And it's important you spray the grass product first. As we started off this segment talking about it, grass is the most important thing to kill in a grass crop like wheat. You want to take care of that first, and a lot of these grass products don't have a huge amount of activity on the broadleaf weeds that you've got, where some of those broadleaf herbicides could ding up some of the grasses and then not allow you to get that grass herbicide in. So do spray the grass herbicides first.
Well, once again, there are a lot of different options for grass control in wheat. The main thing is that you use something. It just makes such a huge difference if you can get grass control and get it early in the season. Don't wait until it gets big. You want to spray the grass when it's 2 inches tall, 1 inch tall, maybe even a ½ inch tall. That would be great. Also keep in mind that a lot of the ACCA's products like Axial, Discover, and Puma do not have residual. A lot of the ALS products like Everest 2.0 and PowerFlex have a fair amount of residual. So there are some big differences there.
Well, we talked about a lot of herbicides here, Brian, but will any of them help with our Weed of the Week? We'll show you which products will work coming up later in the show.